22 часа 28 минут. Масса...
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Dragon deploy verified.
Welcome to Spacevidcast Season 5, Episode 2, recorded live on Saturday, March 17th, 2012. My name is Benjamin Higginbotham. With me, as always, is beautiful, lovely, wonderful, and talented Carrie Ann Higginbotham.
I'm not really level.
Not really level. We have got pages and... Seriously, if you look at our wiki, not that you can see that, it's...
I was going to say, there's a white screen.
There you go. Just
there
pages and pages and pages of stories on the wiki today for us to go through. So let's go ahead and get straight into it. The main topic for today's show is actually Russia. And they have got, there are leaked documents revealing their 18-year plan for their space program. And these plans are quite ambitious. They want to, well, they are.
They want to do a crazy amount of things by 2030, for sure.
They want to send probes to Jupiter and Venus, deploy a permanent network of research stations on the surface of Mars,
right.
And they want to conduct a demonstrative manned circumlunar test flight, all Apollo 8 style, right around the moon. So,
but they eventually want to also land cosmonauts on the moon.
That's correct. The whole point of the circumlunar test is to actually try to land humans on the moon. So,
gotcha.
Main topic of today's stories is can they pull it off?
Right.
And the reason I ask that is they've had a lot of trouble sending probes to like Mars or anywhere else.
Mars does not like Russia.
Mars does not like Russia.
Really
and so
doesn't.
If they want to set up a network on the surface of Mars, are they going to be able to pull this? Can they do this?
Right.
They've also had a series of failures recently as they've started moving towards some of these newer vehicles. Oh, by the way, they also want to build a new vehicle. I mean,
yeah.
It's a lot.
They're not messing around. It's not like they have one goal by 2030. They have pretty much 18 goals in the next 18 years.
And I'm wondering, and please discuss this in YouTube, on Facebook, wherever. I'm wondering if they're setting up a series of stations on Mars and they're looking to land humans on the moon, which we already know we can do.
Right.
Are they actually aiming after 2030 to land humans on Mars? Is this a even longer term strategy of going, okay, we need these iterative steps in order to get humans to Mars? I wonder what is above and beyond the plans that were leaked.
Right, right. Well, and apparently it does say in the plans that they want to solidify their position among the world's top space powers.
And now Uncle BS in the chat room says it's just a lot of press, very similar to saying our goal is. Yes, but if you watched our open, we committed to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. Once you commit your country to doing it,
right.
You're not guaranteed to go there, right?
And like we said, with a deadline. It's not just like, hey, we want to go to the moon someday.
Yeah.
We want to put humans somewhere, kind of, maybe, sort of. This is like, we're doing this by this time. You know, when you go on record like that, I mean, that's a very powerful thing. I mean,
it can be. It can be, right?
Right.
But we also went on record for Constellation.
Because it could be an epic fail.
Who knows what it's going to be? But it's exciting, nonetheless. It's exciting because actually, you know, there was on our Facebook page, facebook.com/SpaceVidcast, there was a great comment by David. He basically said, at least someone is ambitious. Helps to have a goal and a plan. Right now, they ferry our astronauts, and they've got us by the gonads. So. And that's a very fair statement, right?
A little bit, but I think Russia, you know, while they're perfectly happy to take our money to do that,
sure.
You know, it does sort of, every time they have to take an American, there's one less Russian that gets to go up, essentially, right? I think they're sort of done being the international taxi in general.
Possibly. Could be. And right when you think about it, right now, Russia is the worldwide human space program.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, I mean, China can kind of do some stuff, but if you want to go to the ISS, it's Russia. No, that's the end of the list. It's Russia. So, yeah.
There you go.
There you go. All right, moving along. So, love your comments. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you want to put them. Love your comments. What do you think of Russia's ambitious plans to go out into the solar system and work on all of this stuff? So speaking of ambitious plans, the SLS, or Space Launch System, recently had a test. This was a Marshall Space Center test, I believe. This is what I'm calling the mini SRB test. Here, we've actually got footage. Here you go. So there you go. That was a miniature SRB test. Basically, it was a small version, 20-second fires, like 24 inches in diameter, of the 5-segment solid rocket booster that they're proposing for the Space Launch System. And here's where I'm confused, though. Don't we have full-size versions of the 5-segment solid rocket booster that we've already tested for the Ares 1 and Ares 5 rockets that ATK did testing for?
Yeah.
So, and if the chat room can explain to me why this was necessary on top of and beyond the full-size 5-segment solid rocket booster tests, I'd love to hear that. I think we still need more testing on the full-size engines, but I don't understand why we need to do this miniature test, or what the point of that was.
Right.
They basically said,
I mean, they do call it a subscale solid rocket motor.
Obviously, they were looking for something.
Mimic NASA's Space Launch System booster design. And it's great that that test for that particular thing went really well.
Yeah.
But if that's not the exact thing that you're putting onto your rocket,
well, you can still gather data, right?
Yeah,
I mean, just because it's not the exact thing, but I'm just trying to figure out what data they would have gathered there that they couldn't have just gathered with the next full-size 5-segment test. But you know, maybe there's a reason. You know, Bruce is saying it has less risk. Sure, but I mean, we've already started full-size testing.
Right.
So don't you normally move?
Take a step back?
Yeah, don't you normally move from the small tests in the beginning of the process to see how it's going to work,
right,
and then iteratively get bigger? Iteratively, that word's not happening today. Get larger in steps.
Right.
Yeah.
Taking baby steps
until you get to the full-size vehicle or full-size engine.
Right.
We're already at the full-size engine. That's my
Right.
point.
Yeah.
So that's what I don't. You know, you can do more on a small-scale test, sure, but wouldn't that have been done a while ago? So, all right.
Yeah, I mean, if we were starting from scratch, I guess that would make more sense, is our point.
Speaking of things not making sense to me, we talked about this last week on the show.
I didn't think we were actually talking about this. I saw this in the rundown, and I was like, oh, but we already covered that. So
We did already cover this, but here's what happened.
Up.
So we covered the MagLev stuff last week, and we basically said this doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So what happened then is, like, the next day or the day after, a lot of websites started coming out with the, what is it, the Tram? Star Tram, sorry.
Star Tram, yeah, sorry.
Star Tram system. And so, and everyone seems to think that this is a really great idea, and I'll be frank, I still don't buy it. There were comments made in our chat room by rocket scientists, really smart guys saying, you know, this would even make sense on the moon. Let me just give you my argument, and, you know, let me preface this by saying, I actually don't really care. If it gets us into space, then by all means, let's do this.
Right.
This is so what this is This is using existing MagLev technology. We already have MagLev trains.
Right.
We're using technology we have today to build a system that would shoot payloads into orbit. They haven't figured out how to do humans, so we're talking cargo only.
Right.
But this would be able to basically, on a magnetic track, speed things up to orbital velocity, boom, out the front, off you go, you've got your payload into orbit.
In and of itself sounds kind of cool.
It does, and potentially could be safer, because when you think about how a rocket goes up there, it's just a giant controlled explosion.
Yeah.
And I forgot the exact quote, but something like, 1 million things need to go right on a rocket launch, but if you, how's that go? It's the reverse of that. Like 1 million things can go wrong on a rocket launch, but I don't know, whatever it is. You know what I'm trying to say, right?
Right, but only one can go wrong.
Yeah, as soon as one goes wrong, everything. So as soon as the explosion is no longer contained, controlled, the whole payload is lost.
Right.
So with a MagLev system, there is no controlled explosion. It's just an electrical speeding it up over time, and then off you go. But here are the things that aren't really being talked about. From what I've read in the data, we need to get this up a little bit above 60,000 feet in the air.
Okay.
Now, their proposal to get that high is to build it up the side of a mountain. So we're going to curve up a mountain and go 60,000 feet in the air. To put that into perspective, 60,000 feet, that's higher than jet airliners fly, right? So the tallest structure humans have ever built is just under 3,000 feet. So we're talking about, yeah, the MagLev technology is something that we have today, but the ability to build something 60,000 feet into the air, that is not something we have today. So, yeah, and then the startup capital is a $20 billion with a B project. So 20 billion United States dollars to make this all go. It's a lot of money. And no humans, right? So human goes on board, you would be essentially smashed by the G-forces, the acceleration.
Right.
The inertia would just smoosh you back.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're just going to build this on the side of Everest, and everyone's going to be okay with that.
Yeah, and we can barely climb Everest, let alone build on Everest. So there are a lot of engineering hurdles. Then I heard the argument, which is potentially valid. All right, well, build it on the moon. You've got a lot less gravity, but we can't even get humans to the moon right now. So how are we going to build? That's almost a harder challenge to build it on the moon. Maybe there is a place for this technology, but I'm trying to wrap my head around where this fits in the scheme of things, and I'm not seeing it. There are a lot of really cool technologies, and this is an interesting idea, but I would work towards, actually I think Sea Dragon is a better idea than the MagLev system, and we'll talk about Sea Dragon at a later time, but yeah.
Interesting.
So other interesting stuff, moving right along.
Yes.
They have found when you go to space for a long time, that damages your eyes. Basically, there's brain and eye damage.
Right. I mean, there's other health issues that we've talked about previously.
Bone loss.
Right. Exactly. But yeah, the actual problems with your eyes is kind of an interesting one. And the study was done with 27 astronauts who I can't talk, who were in microgravity for an average of 108 days while either in space shuttle missions or just on the International Space Station. And it's been a really interesting sort of microcosm of information. They all didn't have the exact same issues, which I found to be very interesting. They all had some sort of eye issues, but not the same issue with each person.
Yeah. So where I brought this up, and I wanted to put it into the news story, is what happens when Russia decides, or SpaceX, or China, or whomever, decides that, yeah, we're going to put humans on Mars. Well, there's a long time you're going to have to be in space.
Yeah.
A really long time you're going to have to be in space. Is there going to be brain and eye damage just in the transit from Earth to Mars? So interesting, fairly interesting story.
And one of the issues was that astronauts have a tendency to have a hard time returning to 20/20 vision. You usually don't have any astronauts that have anything less than 20/20 go up, which was Richard Garriott's issue, why he wasn't accepted. But he then had LASIK and was able to buy his ticket sort of with Russia. And then NASA has been studying him as well to kind of try and figure out if there were any issues once he came back, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're going to lose your 20/20 vision by going to Mars, and you're going to need glasses once you get there, like, how do you even prepare for that?
Yeah, that's tough.
Right? I mean, that.
Bring a LASIK machine.
Right? I mean, I'll just stock all different kinds of contacts with me to just sort of, pretend. Because, once you're there, it's not like you're hanging out. You obviously have to be doing things. You have to be making things, engineering,
Sure.
All these things that you need your eyes for. And if you don't have perfect vision, or at least near perfect vision while doing that, that could be really
Or you
dangerous.
have to figure out how you can build glasses there.
Huge side effects to that.
Yeah,
Crazy.
So this is something I think we should follow because, we want to do deep space missions and do some really cool things, but we need to know what the effect on the human body is going to be above and beyond the data that we already have.
Right.
And as Vax or someone in the chat room said, the durations of the ISS missions now are designed to be long duration missions so we can simulate what it's going to be like to go to Mars.
Right. Well, they have been limited to 6 months at a time.
Yes.
Which was, because of not just the eye concerns, but many other health concerns.
Right, but it's not even a fair analysis because it's still protected by our atmosphere.
A little bit,
A little bit protected by. So moving along, speaking of companies trying to go to Mars, SpaceX, although not going to Mars this time, it has announced an April 30th launch date for the demonstration mission, the COTS-2, COTS-3 combined demonstration mission for Dragon. This is a really, really cool mission. This is where the first private company is going to loft on their own vehicle a private spaceship named Dragon to the International Space Station, and they will berth with the space station. There's a difference between berthing and docking.
Yeah, which I didn't understand.
Berthing is where you'll be grabbed onto and pulled into the space station, and you won't be under your own power. The space station is going to pull you in, and they will control it.
Right.
Docking is when you're under your own power, and then you dock with the space station. The berthing process is normal. This is the same thing that they did with ATV and all the other vehicles when they were in test flight. So this is just part of the normal qualification process. So this will be the first private spacecraft. You could go to the space station, bring up payload, and then the beautiful thing about Dragon is it actually can downmass payload and get it recovered as well.
Very cool.
That's something that we lost with the space shuttle. Space shuttle wasn't just a great vehicle for upmassing or bringing payload up to the space station, but it had a great downmass capability. So if we wanted to take stuff back down, we could do that. We lost that capability with the space shuttle. The Soyuz rockets, when they send humans up, they really only return humans.
Right.
And then most of the ATV vehicles
They
just
don't
burn
have
up in the
room.
atmosphere. So if we bring an experiment up and want to get that experiment back, not a whole lot of vehicles that can do that.
Yeah. So
Dragon
that's
can.
a big deal.
Yep. Gisick asked, didn't SpaceX install some technologies on the ISS to dock? It's not that SpaceX can't dock. It's that it's part of the standard qualification process that the first flight they berth.
Think of it as an audition.
An audition, exactly. As Matt mentions, it's called Cuckoo, which is the communications unit between the two vehicles. So we're excited for that, and for full, just so everyone knows, I do work at SpaceX, which is why we don't cover a whole lot of SpaceX stories. But although we do have a few SpaceX stories for this particular show, because the next story is actually SpaceX's Dragon Rider. They just released this on their website. This is pretty cool stuff. So,
speaking of how much room is in this thing.
Oh, no kidding. Dragon is huge, right? So here's a shot of Dragon. This is a mock-up Dragon capsule, and this is all available on SpaceX's website under their updates section. So here you can see the Dragon spacecraft, and typically if you've ever seen an interior shot of the space shuttle or a Soyuz, they're tiny. They're teeny. You're shoulder to shoulder. There is not a lot of room to move. The Dragon is like a TARDIS. If you ever watched Doctor Who,
okay.
I swear to you, it looks tiny on the outside, and the moment you step into it, you're like, actually, there's a lot of room here. Here's a shot inside the Dragon with 7 astronauts. 7 astronauts. Now, here's where, all right, so that's kind of hard to tell what's going on. It doesn't look like, I mean, it looks like it's still fairly cramped, and that's just because it's hard to get a picture in there.
But see the plates that everyone's kind of putting their feet on? You see 2 of them sort of right center in the middle there. That sort of leads into this next shot that Ben's going to show.
All right, so
you can see the reverse side of those plates.
Yeah, exactly. So you can see those plates. Here's the other side. There were actually 10 people inside of Dragon at that moment in time, all comfortable, right? I mean, he had his arms spread out over his head. There's Elon Musk, the CEO and CTO of SpaceX. Richard Garriott on the right side, and I forgot the astronaut's name on the left side. I'm a terrible human being.
You are a terrible human being.
Hang on. It's right here. It's Rex.
Yep.
Walheim. There we go. Lots and lots of room inside of Dragon, and there's actually a shot of, much like the Soyuz, you get these custom foamed seats for re-entry, so that you just sit, right inside of that seat.
Yeah.
I just thought that was...
My understanding is that they're custom. I love how they have the little stitching on the inside too. SpaceX. In case you didn't know where you were.
It's almost like Elon owns a car company too.
Right.
And got the guys that do
You said Richard Garriott. It's Garrett Reisman.
Garrett Reisman. Oh, you said Richard Garriott earlier, and Garrett Reisman. Sorry about that.
Just want to be really clear.
So 10 adults inside of Dragon all at the same time, and that's here on Earth. You actually kind of get a little bit more room when you're in 0G, because then you can stretch out and use sections of the spacecraft that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to use because it was above you or something like that.
I can't reach that. Oh,
exactly.
Wait.
Yep, exactly. And if you're interested in more SpaceX stuff, there's actually a 60 Minutes segment that'll be going on this Sunday. And we've got a commercial for that. So here, check this out. I think this is a really interesting snippet of what will be on 60 Minutes this Sunday night or tomorrow night.
Musk says a manned version of the Dragon capsule will be safer than the space shuttle and a lot cheaper. Engineers are already designing escape rockets, life support equipment, and computer guidance systems. They were studying seating for 7 when we were there.
Do you believe that your rocket will be the next American rocket to take an astronaut into space?
I believe that is the most likely outcome, yes.
That sort of confidence has not exactly endeared him to the space establishment or to his competitors.
There are American heroes who don't like this idea. Neil Armstrong, Gene Cernan have both testified against commercial spaceflight in the way that you're developing it, and I wonder what you think of that.
I was very sad to see that, because those guys are, those guys are heroes of mine, so it's really tough. I wish they would come and visit and see the hardware that we're doing here. And I think that would change their mind.
They inspired you to do this, didn't they?
Yes.
So yes, Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time or Pacific Daylight. I'm having a hard time today, aren't I? Pacific Daylight Time. I have no idea. I haven't actually seen any of it in advance, so I have no idea what they're going to say. Other than that, so I'm excited to watch it. I've got my DVR set to record, and
should be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take a quick break ourselves, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the comments you guys left on last week's show, and we've got a few more space news items. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Please welcome Richard Garriott.
I'm a computer game developer.
We think of him as the godfather of virtual world.
Your father had the right stuff, but in my opinion, you have even righter stuff. $30 million.
I will launch and become the first second-generation American astronaut. This entire year, I've been in Star City, just outside of Moscow, training.
This is the goal that I have really been working towards for 20 to 30 years.
The view is going to be fantastic, and you will remember it for the rest of your life.
I wonder if Angry Birds Space is set up from the new Retina display on the iPad.
Ooh.
Right? Yeah, wouldn't that be cool?
I don't know. I don't have one of those iPads.
Neither do I, not yet at least. So before we get into your guys' comments on last week's show, I do want, there was one more news story that I wanted to cover, and actually there's a little video segment that they've got. So I'm going to roll that really quick and then we'll talk about it. So here you go.
We've been together for, I'd say, about 2 years, so it's all, so much time has gone by. We're actually going to get to our first, what I would call, truly complex robotic operation on the space station.
Change display frame to RMTB1 grasp.
So we're actually going to use the on-orbit robot to acquire 3 of the tools that are installed in our payload, grab those tools and actually interface with our payload, like cutting wire, releasing launch locks, and these are tasks that the on-orbit robot named Dexter has never done before.
So as Dexter's performing tasks on orbit, we'll be following along with the robot. There's 4 live high-definition videos coming down from Space Station. We'll be watching those views to see what the robot's doing. We'll be watching the data from the robot, telling us what the robot's actually doing, how it's moving, how fast it's moving, where it is. So if there are issues on the space station, our robot here could demonstrate ways to solve the problem that we're running into in space.
As the robot flies on orbit, the teams have their headsets on. They're listening. Okay, what's going on? We're on procedure 1. We're going to pull the tool out of the stowage bay. So we check, is everybody ready? We get goes from the electrical team. We go for operations, telemetry looks good. Okay. Mechanical, are you good? Tools, are you good? Robotics, are you good? Then we go into the operation.
Copy, you guys are getting to step 59.2.
I tell them here, guys, be watching when these camera views come down, because you really only have a small window to say, break, stop the operation, because they're going to move right on to the next step.
Our robot operators can talk to the Johnson and the Canadian Space Agency robot operators to tell them how to maybe troubleshoot or do the task.
Next command is confirm manipulate auto sequence 508 kilo.
We're going to see this week for the very first time how successful we can be.
This is only the first of hopefully many operations demonstrating robots can service satellites on the space station.
We're really just scraping the surface of what RRM can do. Probably every couple of months from now on you're going to start seeing RRM stuff. We'll do gas transfer tasks, we'll do refueling, and then we have other little busy board tasks like releasing torque set screws, and that'll take us to the end of the year probably to get through all the objectives on this first phase of RRM.
I'm leaving the ending in because I love that ending. This little Goddard spaceflight, I think that's so cool. I know, I'm a nerd, what do you want? So that was Dexter, and here's why that's interesting. They're basically testing the ability...
Glad you're telling me.
Because I was so bored. No, because they're testing the ability to refuel and service equipment, for example, satellites that maybe weren't designed to be refueled. But consider this. Using those same techniques, we could build fuel depots that can be robotically refueled. So we'll just send a bunch of these crafts up there, kind of prep them and fuel them all, combine them together, and then do some sort of really long, large, awesome mission, or maybe a Mars mission, or maybe it's some sort of, you know, just get the fuel up there, and then we can build these fuel depots, and then use the robots to make it all go. That's why I thought that particular story was interesting. More interesting than that is, they're finally using Dexter for something. We were all excited when they sent Dexter up to the International Space Station, and then, like, I never heard anything, right? And we've seen, like, Robonaut went up on, was it 135? 134? One of the last shuttle flights. And I've seen Robonaut now do some sign language.
Yes.
But that's about it. So I'm like, we've got these really cool robots up there. Let's do something with them. And yeah, now they're actually starting to do some cool stuff with Dexter, or as we like to call him, Dextry.
Dextry.
For those who don't know, Dexter was a Canada project.
Yes, from CISA.
It's like Canadarm with but a bunch of them slammed together into one huge dexterous robot.
I've decided that the Canadian Space Agency should be
CISA.
The shorthand should be CISA.
All right. So let's talk about some comments that you guys had from last week's show.
Yes.
Well, I was trying to remember the context. So this is from F Cycles.
Yes. Yes.
I'm trying to remember the context for this comment.
Okay, well, how about I'll read the comment, and then maybe you'll know what
That'll
it's for. He says, I know so far USA is so strong that they might feel it'll never happen. But if you have NASA building it, the technologies, discoveries, and all of that will remain under U.S. control. Well, if you have a private company doing it, if you happen to remove the government money, they could turn they could turn for other countries for funding. They could turn to other countries for funding, I think is what he meant. And if you have a good return on investment to come, money, strategy, or strategic or whatever, it will tend to keep it under public NASA.
Right. So this part of the show was talking about does space need government to survive?
Right.
Do we need to have human spaceflight under government agencies,
and
or
one of
can
the things that
private
we
companies?
brought up, right, was that you know, SpaceX is kind of up and coming, and they're a private company, et cetera, but they're still taking money from NASA.
Kind of, yeah. But they're not taking money from NASA in the traditional way.
No.
Yeah. So
but still, I mean, could SpaceX be as successful as it has been so far without that money that came from government?
Right. So the point here, F Cycles is saying, if you have private companies doing it, you lose a little bit of regulation there. The private company is going to do whatever it takes to make a profit.
Right.
And he'd feel more comfortable with the government because then it will all be out in the open. Well, keep in mind, that's the U.S. government. So the U.S. government, through NASA, will keep that information out in the open, out in the public.
Right.
What happens when China does this?
Right.
They do not have the same regulations that the U.S. has. There's no requirement for them to keep this information public. So, you know, not that that's good or bad. It's just
it's just different.
It's just different. So that may not actually be the case. And if the U.S. continues down the path it's on, there is a chance that, you know, SLS is nothing more than constellation, really.
Right.
And there's a chance it's not going to get built. So we're going to keep rebuilding this human-rated rocket over and over and over again on paper, but never actually build the human-rated rocket. All the while, Russia's trying to go to the moon, China's trying to go to the moon, India's trying to go to the moon.
Right.
So it won't be in U.S. control.
Right. Well, the other thing I think it was interesting that you pointed out was that if you don't have the government money, they could turn to other countries for funding. Like, so if SpaceX turned to other countries for funding, for instance. But isn't there, like, aren't there ITAR issues, or isn't there some sort of something going on with that? Because while it's a private company, it's still an American private company.
Correct.
Yeah?
So you have to deal with all the ITAR, which is the International Treaty of Arms Regulations, or tariff, or something like that. And basically, it prevents you from exporting anything that could be turned into a weapon of mass destruction in it, and basically anyone else that's not part of this agreement. So it's very difficult for a U.S. company to share that data with other countries. It's extremely difficult to do. So next comment was also on YouTube. When will everybody finally just stop messing around and realize that the only viable way to progress far past the boundaries we have set is going to have to be an international effort? And as long as you waste resources on multiplying failing ideas, nothing will go anywhere. Yeah, we probably won't reach Mars for another 35 to 40 years, frowny face. And that's from Mr. The Pablo Sanchez. The fundamental point here being international cooperation.
Well, the idea is that we're all better together than we are apart.
Now, I'm not disagreeing with that, but let me challenge that for a moment. When everyone's together, you end up with something like the International Space Station.
Right.
Woefully late, woefully over budget, and just kind of a compromise floating around the Earth, not doing a whole lot.
Yeah, unfortunately, for us to have an international effort, we all have to agree on sort of some basic ground rules, and that's what's tripping us up in general.
Sometimes. Now, sometimes if we all got together Star Trek style and said, you know what, we're all going to push humanity forward, whatever's best for humanity, then absolutely, using the combined efforts of all humans worldwide, we could do this stuff in record time. We could do amazing things we can't even imagine today. But the cold, harsh reality is we don't live in a Star Trek society just yet. So we still have to deal with the different cultures and different ways of looking things and constantly compromising and just messing around a lot. And the sad thing is when we mess around inside of our own borders and we just can't get stuff done. And I would love to see us really, really, really push forward and say, look, we're going to go to the moon in 10 years and we're going to put astronauts there and you're going to get the money to do that. Realistically, I'm not sure that will actually happen, or Mars, or pick a destination, right? I randomly pick something. You want to take this one?
Sure. So It says, by the way, in terms of Brazil becoming a major spacefaring nation, I think they certainly have the best shot of anybody besides the current quote-unquote space club that has manned spaceflight. Brazil does have an astronaut corps, they flew on the space shuttle, and they have components on the ISS. I wouldn't rule them out completely, and they should be kept on anybody's radar in terms of nations to watch for future developments. The key to Brazilian spaceflight is a strong Brazilian economy, though.
Sure, and that was when we were talking about Brazil. There was an article on, I think, IO9 saying, hey, look, Brazil might be the next big, huge spacefaring country. And we were like, really? Because...
Well, Ben was more surprised than I was. But, you know, again, just to recap really quickly, they are an amazing spot so close to the equator. There's something like 3 points or 8 points off
that's a nice
the
place
equator.
to launch from.
Their particular... area is very sort of well kept and away from people, which Ben said, well, any of them have to be, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. But yeah, no, he's right. There already have been Brazilian people on the space shuttle. So it's not like they're coming out of left field.
Yeah, but you know, having people on the space shuttle, a vehicle that someone else built, having said that, we put humans on Soyuz now.
Right, and going back to the sort of general theme of what we've been saying, forever, but this particular episode is if Brazil can focus, laser focus, and put the money into it, the money and the effort, they can do it.
Yeah, it really is. You just need to commit to it. You need to say, look, this is a strategic importance for us. We're going to make this happen. We're going to throw money at it. But here's an interesting factoid. We all complain about NASA's half cent on the dollar. Neil deGrasse Tyson did a huge thing with that. He wants to move it up to, he said, what if we just made it 1 cent?
Right.
But if you were to take all of the other non-military space agencies throughout the rest of the world and combine all of them, all of their, you still don't reach the amount of money that's pumped into NASA. So NASA is more than half of the worldwide space dollars that's not military.
Sad face.
Right? So if Brazil wants to do this, seriously, you're going to have to pump more money into it. You need to develop vehicles, you need to have a game plan. I mean, there's a lot that goes into this. And this isn't like building an iPhone. I mean, this is some of the hardest things humans have ever done. So, yeah, you need to, make it go. And as Bruce is saying, I need to clarify, those numbers are, that's not military. Right? So military space, totally different thing.
That's a whole other ballgame.
Completely different. So this is non-military space.
Yes.
The civilianized, still government, but civilian space programs. Was that the last comment? Oh, no. This was my favorite comment of all. This was the entire comment. I'm adding it in. I'm showing it anyhow. Glad I subscribed. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel by going to youtube.com/SpaceVidcast. You can also grab us on Facebook at facebook.com/SpaceVidcast or on Twitter at twitter.com/SpaceVidcast, and of course our website at www.spacevidcast.com/SpaceVidcast. I should totally put something there. Absolutely. And keep in mind, we do have a premium product that we produce. It's called Spacevidcast Epic. We're working, there are 3 new videos coming out on Spacevidcast Epic. We've got 2 new LA space salons. We've got an AIAA meeting, was talking about MSL Curiosity, and that was a fascinating meeting. And then we've got another LA space salon that will be shot here at the end of the month. So we've got a ton of Epic coming.
And also another AIAA.
And another AIAA. So you're going to see just this huge surge of Spacevidcast Epic content. And one other thing I'm working on.
Wait, but AIAA, for those of you who don't know, is the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics. So, sorry, go on.
One other thing that we're working on is Epic users, not only will you get extra content, so when we release like an LA Space Salon, we go up to the QA session, but that's all you get. If you want to see all of the QA session, which is usually the most fascinating part of the whole thing, you have to be an Epic subscriber. It's the only way you can watch it. In addition to that, some of these events will be released to Epic subscribers first for a full month. So if you want to see it early, you have to be an Epic subscriber. And you can find out more information at spacevidcast.com/epic. It starts as low as like $8.33 a month. And as an added benefit, it helps us to continue to produce shows like this. Hopefully if we get enough Epic subscribers, we can move back to a real camera instead of this horrible webcam that I absolutely hate.
But everybody loves you in pink.
Everybody loves me in I'm wearing orange. Let me put it that way. All right, any final comments?
No, that's pretty much about it.
Awesome. Hey, stay with us. Spacevidcast After Dark, yet another program that you can watch on Spacevidcast Epic, is up next. I'd like to thank all of you for watching. Remember, our show times did change. Saturdays at 2100 UTC, that is 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, every Saturday. So check us out. Oh, you know what? I wanted to talk about WonderCon. You know what? We'll talk about it in After Dark. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. We'll see you next week.